The world did not end with a roar. It ended in a silence so heavy that the very foundations of the earth seemed to groan under the weight of it. It was Monday, the 12th of Rabi al-Awwal, in the 11th year of the Hijrah, a date that would be forever carved into the soul of the Ummah. In the small mud-brick room of Aisha, the heartbeat that had guided humanity for 23 years finally ceased. The seal of the prophets, Muhammad, had returned to his Lord. For those standing outside the door, the air itself seemed to vanish. This was not just the death of a leader, it was the closing of the gates of heaven. No more revelation would descend. No more divine guidance would be spoken in the rhythmic, beautiful tongue of the messenger. The link between the Creator and the created had been severed. In that moment, the city of Medina, the city that had bloomed under his light, fell into a state of pure, unadulterated shock. Inside the Prophet's mosque, the atmosphere was not one of prayer, but of a terrifying, fractured reality. Umar ibn al-Khattab, a man whose strength was a pillar of the faith, was a man broken by grief. But his grief manifested in a fierce, desperate denial. He stood before the weeping crowd, his towering silhouette casting a jagged shadow across the prayer mats. He drew his blade, the steel screaming as it left the scabbard, and he roared with a voice that shook the palm leaf roof of the masjid. He declared that the Prophet had not died. He claimed that the messenger had merely gone to meet his Lord, as Musa had gone for 40 nights, and that he would return to strike down any man who dared to speak the word death. It was a moment of absolute instability. The greatest warrior of the Sahaba was in a state of denial. The leadership was vacant, and the people were drifting like a ship in a hurricane. But while the city spiraled into chaos, a lone rider was approaching from the outskirts of Medina. From a place called al-Sun, Abu Bakr al-Siddiq had received the word. He did not cry out. He rode with a somber, iron-focused gravity. He entered the mosque, passing the shouting Umar without a word, and went straight to the room of his daughter, Aisha. There, in the dim, flickering light of the chamber, lay the Prophet, covered with a hibara cloth. Abu Bakr, the man who had been the Prophet's companion in the cave of Thor, his closest confidant, knelt by the bed. He uncovered the blessed face, saw the peace upon it, and kissed the forehead of his beloved friend. He whispered, "May my father and mother be sacrificed for you. You were beautiful in life, and you are beautiful in death. The death that Allah has decreed for you has come, and after this, you shall never taste death again." It was the calm before the necessary storm. Abu Bakr stepped out of the room and into the shouting, weeping crowd. He saw Umar still brandishing his sword, trapped in the fire of denial. Abu Bakr did not raise his voice to match Umar's. Instead, he spoke with the quiet authority of the truth. He pulled Umar aside and ascended the minbar. His voice cut through the chaos like a lighthouse beam through fog. He spoke the words that would save the Ummah from devouring itself. "O people, if you worshipped Muhammad, know that Muhammad has passed. But if you worship Allah, know that Allah is ever living and never dies." Then he recited, "Muhammad is no more than a messenger. If he dies or is killed, will you then turn back on your heels?" It was as if the Quran was being revealed for the first time. The sword fell from Umar's hand. The denial shattered. The people realized their mortality and the mortality of their leader. The crisis of faith was settled, but as the sun began to set on the first day without the Prophet, a new political crisis was igniting in the shadows of the city. The crisis of faith had been settled by Abu Bakr's anchoring words, but a crisis of state was just beginning to ignite in the shadows of Medina. While the body of the messenger was being prepared for burial by his immediate family, a secret, urgent gathering was forming elsewhere in the city. Under the shaded canopy of the Saqifah belonging to the Banu Sa'ida tribe, the leaders of the Ansar, the helpers of Medina, were already convening. This was not a gathering of rebellion, but one born of a deep historical anxiety. The two great tribes of Medina, the Aws and the Khazraj, had only been united by Islam. For centuries before, they had been locked in brutal, generational blood feuds that had defined their existence. Their fear was that without the unifying presence of the Prophet, the fractures would reopen. They believed that they, as the original hosts and protectors of Islam, had the rightful claim to lead the new state. They were meeting to elect a leader from among themselves, a leader of the Khazraj, to ensure the security and the future of their own city. The decision was minutes away from being finalized, a decision that could potentially split the Ummah into two separate competing nations. In the center of the gathering sat Sa'd ibn Ubadah, the powerful chief of the Khazraj tribe. He was incapacitated by illness, his body weak, but his voice was a beacon of conviction for his people. He addressed the Ansar, reminding them of their singular virtues, their status as the helpers of Allah. He reminded them of the ones who gave Islam its first base of operations from which to expand. He declared from his sickbed that the leadership belonged to the Ansar. His argument was rooted in a practical meritocracy. A speaker for the Ansar stood and summarized their position. "We are the supporters of Allah, and you, the emigrants, are but a small group among us." It was a statement of demographic fact, but to the ears of the Muhajirun, it sounded like the end of the unity that had defined the prophetic era. Voices inside the Saqifah were rising, and the fragile thread of the Ummah's unity was about to snap. News of the secret gathering reached the mosque of the Prophet. For Abu Bakr, Umar, and Abu Ubaidah, the implication was clear. If the Ansar elected a leader, the nascent Islamic state would vanish overnight, replaced by warring tribal factions. The three men rushed toward the Saqifah. They did not go to seek power. They went on a desperate mission. They went to save the Ummah from devouring itself before the Prophet was even buried. As they arrived at the threshold of the courtyard, the atmosphere was at its absolute peak of volatility. The choice for the Ansar was set. As the three men entered the Saqifah, the courtyard fell into a sharp, expectant silence. Umar, his heart burning with the gravity of the crisis, was ready to speak, ready to exert authority and bring the Ansar back into the fold. He had prepared a speech that was a masterpiece of command, designed to end the crisis through sheer willpower. He was about to speak, about to ignite a fresh debate that could lead to open conflict. But once again, he felt a calm, firm hand on his chest. It was the hand of Abu Bakr. In the shaded courtyard of the Saqifah, the air was vibrating with the friction of centuries of tribal history. Umar ibn al-Khattab, a man of iron and fire, looked at the hand of Abu Bakr, the hand that had held the prophets in the darkness of the cave of Thor, the hand that had spent every dirham of his fortune to free the enslaved, and the hand that the messenger had appointed to lead the prayers when he himself was too ill to stand. Umar did not wait for a vote. He did not wait for a consensus. He stepped forward, his silhouette towering over the gathered Ansar, and he grasped Abu Bakr's hand with a grip that signaled the birth of a new era. "Stretch out your hand, O Abu Bakr," Umar commanded, his voice echoing against the mud-brick walls. "Has the Prophet not commanded you to lead the prayer? Who among us can move himself ahead of the one whom the messenger of Allah placed ahead of us?" In that single decisive moment, the private pledge was born. Abu Ubaidah al-Jarrah followed, and then, one by one, the leaders of the Ansar stepped forward to pledge their loyalty. The thread of unity was suddenly woven into a cable of steel. The next morning, Tuesday, the news of the Saqifah agreement rippled through Medina. But a private pledge was not enough for a state. It required the general pledge, the Bay'a al-Amma. The entire city gathered in the Prophet's mosque, a sea of silent, grieving, yet expectant believers. Umar ibn al-Khattab ascended the minbar first. He addressed the people with a humility that surprised many, admitting his earlier denial of the Prophet's death and testifying that Abu Bakr was the best among them, the second of the two in the cave. He called upon the Ummah to unite behind the man whom the Prophet had trusted most. One by one, the men of Medina and the emigrants of Makkah stepped forward. They placed their hands in the hand of Abu Bakr, a physical and spiritual contract that bound them to a leader who sought no throne, but only the preservation of the prophetic legacy. A physical and spiritual contract that bound them to a leader who sought no throne, but only the preservation of the prophetic legacy. The crisis of succession, which had threatened to burn the house of Islam to the ground before the Prophet was even buried, was extinguished by the sheer weight of Abu Bakr's character and the loyalty of his companions. Then, Abu Bakr al-Siddiq stood to deliver his inaugural address, a speech that would become the foundational document for Islamic governance for over 1,000 years. He did not speak of his power, he spoke of his accountability. His voice, steady and clear, carried to the furthest corners of the masjid. "O people," he began, "I have been given authority over you, though I am not the best of you. If I do well, help me, and if I do wrong, set me right." He established the revolutionary principle of the truth as a trust, and lies as a betrayal. He established the revolutionary principle of the truth as a trust, and lies as a betrayal. He declared that the weak among them would be strong in his eyes until he secured their rights, and the strong would be weak until he took the rights of others from them. He concluded with a condition that would define the Caliphate. "Obey me so long as I obey Allah and His Messenger, but if I disobey them, you owe me no obedience." With these few words, the first Caliph of Islam had defined the state. It was not a kingdom of men, but a kingdom of law and justice. The Siddiq had taken the mantle, not as a ruler, but as a servant of the message. The first great test of the Ummah had been passed, but on the horizon the fires of rebellion were already beginning to smoke. The Ridda wars were coming,